Lonely Monk Productions. I don't know if y'all have heard Rebecca Black's new EP, Salvation, yet, but yo!
That's my joy!
Hey, yo, displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You're tasting things that don't need to be measured. You ain't being judged. What's good, friends and family, neighbors near and far? Welcome to an all-new episode of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. The podcast, website, brand, movement, way of life dedicated to the embrace and championing of your passions. I'm your host, Nate Runkle, a.k.a. John Mulaney, a.k.a. Nate 3.0, back at it again with yet another episode of the podcast. As always, I hope this podcast finds you all in good health and in good spirits. On today's episode, I am joined for a chat with musician and technologist Benji Rogers. We have an incredible chat about music and streaming and AI and so much more. I have been looking forward to this one for quite some time, and it did not disappoint. And that is coming up in a second here. But first, I know, this is supposed to be an off week. Well, I mentioned it in the tag last week, but I found myself with a bunch of interviews recorded and a few more that are recording this week, and I don't want to get behind on the release of these, so you can expect to see some episodes sprinkled in here and there in the off weeks. And I know, Nate, they say one of the tenets of podcast success is consistency. Well, look, the dream of podcast success has long since sailed, man. Would it be nice? Heck yeah. But it's no longer what drives me to do this show. What drives me to do this show is having the opportunity to have conversations like the one I'm bringing you today. You know, I get lost at times in the numbers and the analytics and the charts, and I lose focus of what actually brings me joy. And what brings me joy is talking to people that I admire and presenting that conversation to you so that you can experience these people who I think are great and they have something to say or have created something inspiring. We kind of talk about it here in the episode, but I think as a society, we've been conditioned to find worth in the number of people that we're reaching and less about the quality of what we are saying. I would much rather create this for the few people who seem to really enjoy this than shake it up and try different things to reach the people who don't even know that I exist. You know, I'm here to dance with who I came to the dance with, so to speak. And so if you've been with me for more than just this episode, I thank you. I value that more than you will ever know. And if this is your first time listening, I value the hell out of that too. There is so much out there, and that you took a shot to spend a little bit of time with me in my bullpen, well, I really appreciate that. And I value your time. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to ask that you follow the socials at Yo, That's My Jawn. I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe, rate, review to this podcast. I'll say if you want merch or if you're interested in more things about me, you can go ahead and check out yothat'smyjawn.com. And then now I'm going to shut the fuck up and I'm going to start this episode. My guest today is a musician, entrepreneur, technologist, and is the co-founder of multiple companies, including Verify Media, Lark 42, Radiary Creations, and Pledge Music. He has been recognized on the Billboard 40 Under 40 list and has been awarded the Digital Executive of the Year. And also, in a former life, he was the frontman and creative force behind the band Marwood. Folks, it is my honor to welcome to the show, Benji Rogers. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined today by the great Benji Rogers. Benji, thank you for joining me on Yo, That's My Jawn.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
So I've been wanting to have this conversation for a little bit of time, and there's a little history behind it, but I'm going to cough real quick.
Cough, go away. Get it all out.
But, you know, you just said, it was great to meet or whatnot. We actually met back in another life. And so this is going back, I want to say probably 20 years or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Fergie's Pub in Philadelphia at an open mic night. You were performing.
Yes.
I was performing. And
Fergie's Pub. Okay, that's coming back to me. Wow.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah, very long time. So like I had, you had given me a copy of the Marwood sampler. And
we're going old school.
We're going
here.
back, my
this
friend.
This is excellent.
and I was a bit like, I dug your stuff, man. Like I think we talked on MySpace a little bit after that, but yeah. So this is like so it's like a full circle moment almost.
We are dating ourselves here in an epic way. I love it. Well, good to see you again. Really good to see you again
as well.
Yeah.
So I always like to start these conversations in the Wayback Machine. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself growing up.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm the son of three music industry managers, mother, father, stepfather. So, like my entire life, I've been, on tour, in some way, shape, or form, or in a studio. So, literally, my entire life was uh, in and around the music industry, and my entire family. So that meant that what would seem odd to a lot of people was completely par for the course in my life. That also meant that I got to meet all the famous people I ever wanted to meet, and I got to see shows on like, I know we're going to get to those questions later on, but like, I really have been able, just so blessed to be um, able to meet whoever, anyone who I wanted to meet, be in places that most people would dream of, and I vowed I would never take it for granted, and I've not so far. So. By the way,
That's
my
beautiful.
dog's eating. Can you hear my dog eating?
No,
Just in
I
case.
can't, but
Okay, excellent. Well, she's being very, very good about it.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's amazing though. When did you so were you always gravitating towards music then? Like there was no rejection of the family biz or
Yeah.
anything?
The infection started early and it was not going to give up for anything. No, it was so my earliest memories are of falling asleep while my father was playing and singing in a band that he was in. And then I remember being in like record labels with like Seymour Stein and people like that, like literally when I was a kid, and being on tour with bands, sleeping in flight cases, literally like like in the foamy bits inside flight cases. I slept in those, and so it always gave me this perspective. So everything that I've done in technology or music has always revolved around like how do we help keep the creators in good financial health. Because what I very, as I was touring with my own band, I kind of saw the MP3 wave hit directly. I saw the upside to it, and I saw the downside. And then after like playing in bands and touring, and like my first show was at my high school. And then later on, just touring and making records and having my own label, my own publishing company, having various managers. Um, I then in 2009 got all curious about technology, and so I founded the company Pledge Music. To quote the Hold Steady, massive highs, crushing lows. And when I left, sadly, the company didn't make it after I'd left, but it really sort of everything has been seen through that lens of how can you help creators have economic dignity. And in my current life, where I help we help music companies understand technology and technology companies understand music. We help anything that helps artists. We say no to more than we say yes to, because ultimately, I think we're at another one of those precipice points, tipping points for the creator community, and it's ours to lose. And I was early making my own CDs. I remember early days, CD like what I gave you probably came from CD Baby, like back in the day. So I was always like, if someone told me it couldn't be done, I would try and find a way to do it. And that was also just when you're a son of managers who were very entrepreneurial, you kind of say like, oh, is that what everyone says you're supposed to do? What if we did something else? And that's always been sort of a driving force.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned MP3s. One of the themes that's kind of come up a lot on here,
Mm,
it comes across as that I'm like anti-streaming or whatnot.
mm,
But I just I need to reconcile with as much as it's come up in the past 2 or 3 years that I am anti-streaming. I think I am. I think I can
yeah.
finally say that, which is like coming to the realization, mostly in the past few months, that like the streaming system was created to stop piracy, but all it literally did was replace piracy with other with a
Mm,
form of piracy that kind of gives back a little sometimes to some people,
yeah.
right? But what was the moment for you that kind of clicked that like the marriage of technology and music
Mhm.
was essentially being exploited?
Before we kick into that though, I think it's really important to like that feeling that you feel and that so many creators have felt. There's a reason that that exists. And what I would say is, you mentioned streaming was created to stop piracy. I don't think that's true. That's a narrative, right? That was a story. It's a really good one to tell. But if you think about what the streaming model actually is, right? The whenever we'll talk about this in AI, but like let's just start with streaming because it's really it's like whenever you think about a technology, you have to ask, what does the technology want? What is its goal? Because it's never neutral. This idea, oh, technology is neutral, that is untrue. And you can read any of the literature from, sort of like Neil Postman, you name it. We are a tool using species, or we are used by our tools. That's sort of how that rolls. So, what does a streaming company want? What's its goal? And the answer is it wants to give the listener, the user, as they would call it, right? Um, Enough to keep them always subscribing while paying the least for it. So at its heart, that business model is actually against the creators themselves. So and it's gone to a point now. So there are people who've tried to break the mold, like Mike Pelzinski, who I work with, who's really done amazing work on fan-powered royalties, right? That's completely fair, right? It's a better model with more economic dignity. The reason it's not everywhere, well, doesn't help certain people. And so when we think about the actual core of what does a streaming service want, it wants to pay, it wants to give the user what they want for the least amount of money possible. So that could look like, you know, I bring someone in to listen to my old Marwood album, right? When they land there, what's Spotify's next move or Apple's next move? Its move is to send it to somewhere that potentially has lower royalties to pay, or preferably not at all. So you can imagine that in the long run, an artist brings their customers to the streaming platform. The streaming platform sends them to podcasts, audiobooks, because there's no royalties exchanged there. You can pay flat fees and or in its future incarnation, just generate new songs. And Liz Pelly has written a new book. I've got it here somewhere. Yeah, Mood Machine, right? I haven't
Yes.
read it yet, but my partner's read it in Lark, in my consultancy company, and she was saying that like, but I read the previews of it, Perfect Fit Content. So whenever an artist or creator gets involved with the technology, you have to ask, what does the technology want? Then you can figure out your way in. So the answer, I say this to my students when I teach at Berkeley as well, is music industry was not designed, the music streaming services were not designed to make money for creators. That's not their goal. It never has been, and it never will be, because it's fundamentally unaligned because you're competing for the same audience. The streaming service needs the artist's audience more than the artist does because it can then send it to Joe Rogan and other places to listen for 3 hours without royalties. So that model is inherently not going to work, which is why we need new economic models that are involved. But I also would say this, we must never confuse music being sold badly with people not wanting to buy it. Those are two different things. And the first thing I do whenever I talk to a musician is I say, go to the homepage of Bandcamp. And they say, "Oh, Bandcamp, I heard it." I said, "No, no, go to the homepage, because when you look and you see there's a ticker, and it's people spending money on music, often paying more than the music costs. So the reason you're feeling that is because it's true. It's not designed to help creators. It was designed to help streaming services sell subscriptions and to make the major labels money. If you know that, then you can choose your path in. You can choose where you want to be and what is economically dignifying to you. But if I hear one more artist say to me, "Oh, you don't understand how it is, you boomer. This is how it goes. I send my music to a Mark Zuckerberg platform. Mark Zuckerberg then sends them to a Daniel Ek platform, and then somehow I complain about how I don't make that much money." I'm like, what if we didn't do that, right? Mark Zuckerberg doesn't need the eyeballs because he's competing for your users as well. You can't share your customers with companies that are designed to extract from both of you, right? It's an extraction process. So the way I said it is like the most important relationship is direct to fan. So imagine an old school scenario. Artist takes stuff to A&R. A&R takes it to distribution to store to fan. All that noise in the middle. You got an artist here and a fan here, and the fan really wants to buy stuff. No, no, you must not buy. You must go to my Instagram to then my Spotify. But
Yeah.
what if I just went here? No, 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 you must go to Instagram. I haven't given Mr. Zuckerberg my fealty today. I haven't given my fealty to Spotify. I must, kneel it there, or I'm even worse, pay some service to just drive, BS streams. Because I think we look at music often like we try and look at it from the Beyonce lens when we should be looking at it at the coffee shop lens, right? And in anything in life, but in particularly in the music industry, right? Luck is not a strategy, but you're going to need it. And so preparing as a creator for a life in which you can connect with your fans will only ever give you better leverage in any record deal or publishing deal you're going to get, and will only ever give you more economic dignity because the people who want to buy things from you directly can. They will buy vinyl if they not even own a record player. They will buy cassettes if you'll offer them, because what they're really buying is is I was there, I was part of it. And can I share one story? If I'm
Yeah.
noodling,
No, man, I love it.
so when I was in the band years ago, this is talking about the MP3 kind of disruption side. The disruption at the time was actually CD burning. So we were at a show. I just paid like $1,000 to make CDs. It's a lot of money, and I was like $70,000 in debt at that point too. So I pushed all my chips in. So I'm at a show, and this really drunk guy comes up to me, and he's got like a 10 single dollar bills wadded up in his hand, and all sweaty and drunk, college bar, and he goes, oh man, I want to buy a CD. And I was like, great, man. I was like, are you a stripper or a bartender? Why all the singles? And he goes, no, 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 we've all chipped in, and I'm going to burn a copy for everyone. And I looked at him and I had this moment, and I just gave him a big hug, and I said, oh, thank you, man. I said, don't do that. Here, I'm going to sign 5 copies for you. Take them. And he's like, but I've only got $10. I'm like, listen, you have work to do. You've got to get drunker than you are. Like, I get it. The upshot was what he was saying to me was, I want in. And the only thing I said is just sign my email list. So he signs the email list. And that night, on the way, when we got back, I emailed everyone on the list like I always did. Thanks for being at the show. Good to see you. Call them out by their names, on and on. And sure enough, $40 in PayPal comes. It's people want to be a part of things, but if you're in college, that 15th beer is the most important one sometimes, right? Um, and so I think that that was my view on the CD burning was like, this guy wants in. I don't want to shut him down. I want to give him and his friends a way to be. Whoa, we got signed copies of this unknown, half English, half American guy. And then, but what it leads to is down the road, he'll never forget that. Now, had I become a famous musician, you can imagine, oh, dude, I remember this guy, that everyone has those stories of the artists, right? But when MP3 came along, specifically, I remember a really great moment, which was, hey, I don't have to make CDs. I can just say we're on iTunes. And when they would buy it for 99 cents, that's, 70 cents, 69 cents for me if it's independent, 30 cents for iTunes. Felt like a lot for iTunes. They weren't doing much other than
Yeah.
hosting a file somewhere in the cloud, which at the time was more complicated than it is today. But ultimately, had there been a Bandcamp, that would have been one of the first places I would have gone, because Bandcamp really is this really, I hope it doesn't change under new ownership, but like it's where I'll go to listen to Bandcamp weekly. I'm not going to love everything. He's a little too esoteric for my taste, but are we meant to? How much can we discover? Because discover is really drip feeding in a streaming world. But I view discovery as this, like if I find one new track a week, I'm gonna need time to go dig into this artist, figure out everything else they've done, like that thing. And I'll say this: my kid's 13, and they're really into going deeper and into discovering things in a way that I was. That is not really happening anymore. They're into anime and manga and all kinds of like cool stuff like that. And the lore and the depth that those artists go to is there, but it's not on social media in the same way. You have to dig around. It's like, it's kind of hidden. And since they don't have a cell phone, they won't get one until they're 18. Flip phone, yes. Smartphone, no. Watching the way that they navigate the fan space, it's really powerful. And wanted to go see the Yoasobi show at Radio City, and I got tickets for her and her friend, and all the merch was sold out. Every last piece. People want to pay. That's the part. And I think what you're feeling there is the absolute legitimate response to something doesn't feel right, because it's not. It's not that you don't figure out a way to participate in that economy, because it is going to be, but it's not the primary driver. The primary driver has to be somewhere else. And musicians and creators today have been, I call it the music industry industrial blog complex, which is like 10 ways to optimize your Instagram so that you can get to, 15 ways to optimize your playlisting strategy.
Yeah.
This is not a problem you have. You have a problem of, I need to get another 20 people to my show. I need to get another 30 people listening and participating and sharing, because streaming was designed to make streaming companies money, period. That's not a wrong. That is just a capitalistic fact. However, that doesn't mean we have to, that has to be our default. And, any musician, artist, creator, anyone who works with them, can you imagine any other industry where it's like, hey, we're going to do the same release strategy as the other 9 million people.
Right.
It only works for about 30,000 of them ever in the history of music ever. But we're going to double down. Like, you have to think like, well, if everyone else is doing that, what if I did this? And that applies to social media, that applies to streaming, and that certainly applies to AI.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there, but what you were kind of getting at is kind of essentially what I mean, in that, like, in the past few years, I've recognized, especially starting this podcast, has kind of changed my opinion on things that used to be there, which is I like. And with this podcast, I don't want global domination anymore. I want a community, and I want to build my own community. And I think that's like you were saying, these things aren't built for you to build a community around. These things are built to keep you on the platform. I one of the things that, like, I also look at, like you were saying, like, people want to engage, is the effect to me that the pandemic has had on people's relationship with music and creatives in general, because I feel like we all saw that it was almost all taken away, and then we've kind of locked into, like, wanting to give and wanting to be like you said, wanting to be a part of the things that we're kind of engaging with which is a beautiful thing that came out of kind of one of the most horrific things we've lived through.
Yeah. But I think technology. I'm on a big push right now in my personal life, which is like, I'm a reader. Everything is about books, because I think that the arguments that you unpack on a podcast where you've got time to talk about it, or the arguments that a book unpacks, you're going to see the world differently. Content doesn't necessarily survive being made short and small. That isn't a thing. And throughout history, things have changed. Things that this is proven out, right? The introduction of the telegraph, right, was really positive in one sense. Again, what does technology want? It wants to convey information. What does it have to do to that? It makes it very, very small, which means, you can say, oh, I'm so in love with you, or like, love you, stop, it shrunk. And Nicholas Carr in his book Super Bloom talks about this idea of content collapse. He described that, when Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo before the First World War, diplomacy was conducted via letter, beautifully written letters, and going to different capitals, which might take days at that time, right? But this was the first time that the telegraph got in the way. So what that meant was the way that diplomats spoke via this new technology changed it. And they would, if you read their accounts at the time, they were like, this is more aggressive sounding because the very medium, the content itself changed it. So when you put a vinyl on, you're interacting with that artist in a very intimate way. When you sit down to watch their video, you're sitting down to watch something and you to be with them. That can be a moment of immense intimacy. And remember that MP3s were not meant to sound good. They were meant to move fast. That was
Yeah.
their purpose. So the content mattered less, what the music was mattered less than the fact that the content was in this new form. And every time we change the format, we change what that means. Marshall McLuhan said it was, the medium is the message. And what he really was saying by that was, is like, when you alter it, it changes stuff. So in the pandemic, the opportunity for things like Patreon, the opportunity for things like Substack grew because ultimately they were ways of, your desire for communication. Unfortunately, in a social media world, that's hijacked because algorithms are fundamentally dehumanizing. Their goal is not to make community. Their goal is to sell ads or keep, daily. I wrote a reason about daily active user, right? Daily active usage is the thing that a drug dealer and Mark Zuckerberg want, right? They both have the same goal, which is, can I keep this human alive to keep consuming what I'm offering them so I can extract from them, but keep them at that edge of needing continuously. So, your instinct is correct. They're not your followers. They're not your
Y-
likes. They're
No.
nothing to do with it. It's an abstracted thing because the medium has altered it. And in my last piece I wrote on my Substack, I said you cannot have democracy and social media because the medium is not conducive to understanding each other. Fundamentally, we're losing what it means in that way. So the only platform I see that is slightly different from that is two, Patreon to some extent, but Substack has created a really fascinating model because they don't make money unless you do. So what that means is they're trying to bring people together in affinity. Doesn't mean you need to agree, but it means that, like, and I was reading a Michael Moore Substack post and he said, the great thing is no one will pay $5 to scream at me and, say horrible things. They won't pay. So I don't need to, so they don't matter. Whereas on social media, they win points, likes, hearts, if they say horrible things. And so, how can we have a dignified world as humans, as creators, in a space that is simply designed for something else? It's not designed to foster connection. It's designed to minimize friction. But, you and I sitting down having coffee, like, it's wonderful that we can do this, but wouldn't this be great if we're sitting down having coffee, in your favorite spot in Philly or my favorite spot here in New York, and we're having a moment together? So I think the pandemic really accelerated technology. And as David Sachs in his book, The Future is Analog, said, the pandemic ushered in this wonderful digital world and it fucking sucked.
Yeah.
And it's like, so, we must preserve the good, honor and cherish it. Like, I've had more incredible interactions with Zoom. I still talk to my friends and family more than I did before the pandemic on Zoom. We're able to do this on Zoom. But I never lose sight of the fact that every technology gives something, but you have to ask, what does it take away? Is this always something always has to go?
Yeah.
And fundamentally, what Neil Postman said was that, like, the technology isn't a new version. Zoom is not a new version of the telephone. It is something different. And social media is not a new version of a message board. It is different. And we have to navigate those differences with a North Star, which is ultimately about how do we navigate the things that enlarge us and don't diminish us? And it's a real simple question. Whenever I'm thinking about a new technology or a new platform, I always ask, is this going to enlarge? Will this make my world better or not? And thus far, even though there's some far right, far left crazy stuff on Substack, it's not there to build that. It's there to bring people in affinity together. So they've gotten stuff wrong, they've gotten stuff right, but ultimately, um, I've engaged with it more in a positive way than any other platform ever. I feel good after it, even if I'm reading or listening to tough stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
yeah,
it's one of the fundamental breakdowns I think that social media has caused, and the internet kind of at large, but mostly social media, is that now everyone has a place to say something, but no one's listening to any of it.
yeah,
And like Substack to me feels like a conversation. Like even
yeah,
a long post feels like an invitation to open up a bigger dialogue about
mm,
whatever is being presented, and like it kind of goes back to streaming and Spotify
yeah,
as well. Like, I don't know how many people are actually listening to Spotify. Now, I'm not talking about music fans, and I'm not talking about people who want to connect with the artists they're seeking out.
yeah,
But I firmly believe that the majority of people have Spotify on in the background, probably on a playlist, probably on shuffle, which is less about listening and more just kind of about I don't know, setting a mood almost
yeah,
or something.
yeah.
And it always brings me back to Impossible Germany by Wilco.
Mm,
Tweety's
yeah.
line about
Unlikely Japan.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I know you're not listening. Like
yeah,
that's no
yeah.
one's listening, and that's it. But one of the big things, obviously, that brought us together for this conversation is the concept of AI
Mm,
and music and the way that people have rejected it. I'm like I don't believe in things being bad as much as I just said I hate streaming. I
mm,
believe in people's general use of things as
yeah,
being bad. And what excited me when I read your article about attribution was it was finally someone who wasn't just like the sky is falling. What the fuck are we going to do?
yeah.
It was an actual solution. Here's something we can do. And not only did you have a solution, but it made sense, not just like mentally, but financially for an artist to kind of get behind. Explain kind of,
Sure.
if you can,
Yeah, yeah.
attribution.
Happy to. It's a weird thought, but so I'll come back to the same question, which is that like, what does an AI company want? Right? An AI company wants to give the user what they want, right? So make me a song that sounds like Donny Hathaway, right? So um, the goal of the AI is to generate a song that sounds like Donny Hathaway. And so the secondary goal is it wants to do that for the least amount of money possible. So the best way to do that is to steal everything that would go into a Donny Hathaway song and not pay for it. That's ideal, right? So that's what your platforms have done. They've come out and said, we're just going to steal everything and we're going to call it fair use. And so as a creator, as Donny's estate maybe, you'd be like, well, we didn't consent to that. And you're worth hundreds of millions, in some cases, billions of dollars. So where's ours in that? And so what's happened is a lot of AI companies have said, well, it's a black box. It's too complicated to unpick what's happening inside. To which the very smart engineers at the company I'm working at right now said, hold my beer. And they're like, let me explain to you why that's incorrect. And what it turns out is that um, you can't opt out by telling an AI company I want out. That isn't a thing because an AI company doesn't know what you are. Music is wave files, it's Reddit posts, it's lyrics, it's MIDI information, it's songs, stems, compositions, it's all of these different things. But to an AI company, it's just data. And the more data, the better. And so when I looked at this from sort of like what's happening, what I realized was well, if the goal, similar to streaming, give the user what they want that keeps them paying for the least amount possible, well, the easiest thing you could do is basically create fake versions of the artists and use those to generate your songs because everything has to come from somewhere. Like the way I think about it is an AI wants to create anything that you want out of everything. The problem is humans own everything, right? We own stuff. And the idea is really fundamental to, again, economic dignity. And so the thing that this company got right and this way of looking at it was it said that, and I believe this fundamentally, the most important technology of our lifetime as creators is going to be attribution. And it's a quirky reason, but so stick with me while I describe it, but it's because of this. It's because if you know where something has come from, then you can do a licensing deal based on that trickling back to you. And it turns out that, and if you want out of that, you have to show the AI what you are. So you can imagine you're an artist, you're saying like, hey, it's me, it's Marwood, don't train on me. Well, what are you? What do you look like to a machine?
Yeah.
Right? Because remember, it scraped YouTube, it scraped Reddit, it scraped every single, musical database, everything that it can. It doesn't need the ISRC codes. That all that's meaningless to a machine. It just needs the raw information. So what it does is, what attribution is you take the artist's work, and I've done this myself with my own Marwood songs, and you basically mimic the training process. You do what OpenAI, what Suno and Udio do, but you do it in favor of the artist, and the artist owns it. So the artist gets to say, hey, Suno, Udio, OpenAI, as of March 5th, 2025, my music is available for you to train on via this API. APIs are how computers speak to each other. So, which means you're not allowed to get it from anywhere else. I'm showing you what I am. And that also means that I get to set rules. So maybe you can train on any song but this one. So I want to opt this song out. And we'll talk about opting out in a minute, but the most important thing is this. So do you want to be a little piece of a $256 billion company like OpenAI? Or do you want to opt out and say, no, I don't want to be part of it? Right? If artistically that's not your thing, I get it, 100%. If you're a writer, an author, you don't want to be part of it, I get that. However, and this is the tricky part, right? You won't know if you're opted out unless you show the machine what you are, because machines need to read code. And in 2016, when I was working on this project in the blockchain space, I remember saying all songs must become code, not WAV files and ISRC codes, but code, computer code, because ultimately these songs are going to exist in this way for companies. And companies are going to, and if companies can do the right thing with them, you can compel that. But so today, and one of the posts I wrote was, we need APIs, not petitions, because all a petition does is say, hey, I'm Benji, opt my songs out. Well, where would you go to look up what songs I own? Would you go to my PRO? Is the information correct there? Who owns the publishing? Like, it's a complicated mess, right? Have the publishers given permission? Does the songwriter? So what we did at Sureel was, and what they did, and then I came in and took the credit for helping them get out there and explain it. But it took a really thoughtful CEO who comes from a family of creators. And what he wanted to do was basically put the power of AI in the artist's hands with the option of, listen, you can opt out or you can opt in. But if you opt in, you can choose. I always want it to sound like me. So you can't mess with me too much. And the AI will know, okay, it always has to sound like Marwood. Or you can say, it must never sound like me, which means you can pull the elements from my work and I can still get paid from them, but it won't sound like me. Because if it sounds like you, one argument is you're competing with yourself. So like my kid loves Olivia Rodrigo, but Olivia Rodrigo has 2 albums. So now imagine, like, make me a new Olivia Rodrigo song, but make it anime manga style. So now that new recording is competing with Olivia Rodrigo, particularly if she's not making money for it. But imagine a scenario, make me a song that sounds like Olivia Rodrigo, but manga style. No problem. That'll be $2. Check. Platform gets 15%. 85 goes back. We're back into a transactional model available to pro users only, which means you get there. And then that person can release it if they want. The thing that artists have to grapple with is this. Um, things, this is a replacement technology. It's going to do this. And so if your work is not part of the overall body of what's going to be made, you're just going to miss out on the money. And I think that this attribution framework, and Mike Pajinski and Tamai and the team, Mike in particular has really put some thought around the economic model. Basically, it could be the largest economic windfall for music creators in history. You know, CISAC, the French CMO, collective management organization, they estimated that it would be worth $16 billion a year, 42 billion by 2030. So you might be a small percentage of that. You might be a big percentage of that. And this is where the AI stuff gets really clever and complicated. So one thinks as a human, I want to create a rock song. So I'm going to need a bunch of rock songs to do that. It's not true, right? What we found was that 80% of songs are kind of the same. Verse, chorus, bridge, except for jazz and other stuff like this, but kind of similar, right? Beats are kind of similar, you name it. So really what an AI needs to know is what makes them different. What makes Donny Hathaway at the bitter end sound that way? What makes Michel Ndegeocho's bass do that? What makes it special? That's the secret sauce. That's the most important bit. And so the reason this is so critical is we need to understand how a machine views that so that when it makes those outputs, that special part trickles back to the right person. It's irrelevant of genre because it turns out it can take a cover version of a Taylor Swift song and create a Taylor Swift song. It can take a bit of Queen. It might take a bit of a classical tune. It might this. It doesn't matter the genre. It takes from everything because it's not human. It doesn't have a genre button in its brain. It just looks at what the information looks like and says, can I give this human what I want at the least amount of cost to me? And so what we think is fascinating is two things. Number one is it might be AI companies might favor independent artists' work because it's easier to license at fairer, right? Because it could take record companies years to do anything, right? But independent artists may be ready to go. So right now, as these companies are building and you're part of that, it might favor your work over someone else. To get to that Olivia Rodrigo song, it might be taking from 5 independent artists to do that. And if those independent artists are part of the attribution, they're getting paid and it's passive income. There's no promotion needs doing it. It's just literally just being in there. So that's why I think one of the reasons that artists should think about being in. The other reason is it's really hard to be out. So if my kid wants to be out of AI training, right? Let's say they make comic books, manga, etc. But let's spin back. Imagine a DNA, right? Our DNA. So my kid doesn't want her DNA in this thing, right? But I do. Well, 90% of my DNA and hers is going to be the same. So effectively speaking, how do you remove one and the other, right? It's a tricky thing. And that's the same thing with songs, because sometimes AIs will create things that are very similar without having touched your originals. That's where attribution is a weapon. Because now I'm as an AI company, I'm saying, well, I didn't take from you. And this
Right.
is why when we license, so to simplify it, every creator must own what they look like to an AI. And so that when they license it, whether through their distributor, label, or on their own, so that when they license it, they can show the AI, this is who I am and this is what I want to have happen. I don't want to be in any white supremacist stuff. I don't want to be in, like, you can specify all these things if you place it in there. But if you don't, it might come up with stuff based on you from what it's scraped from the internet. That's one possibility. Or the second thing is it will be generating stuff like you by accident. So really, aside from the moral side of I don't want a machine to touch my stuff, which again, that's you do you. If you don't want in, but you can't do that unless you have a technical solution to a technical problem. And, you know, every label and every publisher should be rushing to protect their stuff in this way and any other way you can find, because otherwise, they'll create synthetic versions, fake versions of these songs, and they won't need it. And Elon Musk, who I'm not crazy about, he said the other day, that's an understatement.
Yeah, I
By
would
the
say.
way, but he said the quiet part out loud. He said basically we've trained on every single piece of human knowledge. We've run out of stuff. We now need to make new versions that we can train from. Now, I didn't give him permission to train from me. Did you?
No.
This podcast has been trained on,
Sure.
right? You
Yeah.
know, so we have to show these machines what we are in order for them to do the right thing if they want to, but most importantly, so that we can take action if they choose to do the wrong thing continually. And so, when Sarah Silverman or New York Times sued the companies, one of the biggest, toughest parts is from the company's perspective, how can we know what to avoid if you won't show us?
Right.
But then if we show you, you steal. So you have to start with this technical solution and then you get there. And I personally, like, when I was given the option for like, so for example, my music's not on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, and all the other services, I just chose not Spotify, about when Neil Young took his stuff off. But I chose to opt in because ultimately I want to be part of that future. I want, if it's going to train, I'd love for it to take from me, because I'll get the passive income from it when the licensing deals land and everyone does well. Because this does not go back, and this toothpaste will not go back in the tube. It's out. There is no going back. No technology has deployed at this scale and speed. And the incentives are so powerful to go all in. And so I think we have to sit there and say, if I opt out, I need to do so technically so I can show them that and I have an enforcement mechanism. But if I opt in and I set the rules correctly, so I'm not competing with myself, then I can make money with everybody else. And there's a very strong case to be made that because the compositional elements of a song are so much more powerful to an AI than the actual sound recordings, that just being in that publishing lyric side of things might be more money than you never make from streaming in the first place. So it could be the biggest win. We won't know until this shakes out, but I guarantee you this, if you try and opt out and send letters, you're in, whether
Right.
you like it or not. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. What it seems scalable that it could be used for not just music as well. Is that a feature yet to
Yeah.
be able to do other forms of writing and artwork or?
Yes, so because Tamai, the CEO, is like, and he's a brilliant guy, and all of his team, they're so like dedicated to helping musicians. I think it's because his family are all creative, so they started with visual. That's the easiest one, and then it went to music, and then they can do video. We can do lyrics now, working on, but we'll have words and books, and then it kind of goes out from there. But yeah, basically any type of media can be protected, and the model opting out is a cost because we have to run the process, and that's running data centers, etc. Opting in, we can take a piece of the revenue of the calculation because we just want to calculate that. But yeah, it's for anything, and I think think about it in terms of medical data and financial data, films, television, books, everything, podcasts, right? If this podcast is helping to make OpenAI create auto-generated podcasts better. And this is the other cool thing. It's not just about attribution to the asset, right? If you think of it this way, what if we inspired the AI to create something? So you remember Pharrell and Robin are in the studio and they're kind of like they're inspired by Marvin. They're feeling the vibe, right? Like that. Well, you know what? a human brain doesn't really quantify that, but a machine does. And so we look at not just the specific of like the asset, but also how did it influence the model to make it better, but how did it inspire the model to make the song? And so we need to track chains of what we call chains of inspiration and chains of influence, because both are different, right?
Yeah.
If I say to it, make me a song like Michelle and Dougie, well, she's got 17 different genres. Which one? So it'll make something inspired by her, probably from a bunch of those, but also taking from things she might have played on, or just stuff that sounded like, that fit the math. So if we miss out on that part, we could be missing out on revenue. And ultimately, this is about music creators holding on to their digital stake in a rapidly digital world.
Yeah. What's the reception been like? Because I know anybody who I've kind of in conversation talked about, this
Mm.
has been like, oh, that's exactly, yeah, there's no, like, that sounds fantastic. Like, what have you, like, not just from musicians, but also from like AI companies and whatnot.
Yeah. So I'll start with the AI companies. So again, we don't know what the AI companies want. So in one sense, attribution reveals the original sin, right? So we got to be careful with that. So I understand that. That's a legitimate, like, I get it. A lot of them also have been trying to fight in court, saying it's impossible. It can't be done. Again, hold my beer. Let's show you.
Yeah.
Um, but now I'd say the larger rights holders are the ones who are sending AI companies to us to say, listen, you need to talk to them. You need to get this show on the road. So I will say this as well. There's a bunch of AI companies that really, really want to do the right thing, and they're in it for the right reasons, and they're trying to be fair. The challenge that they have is you can make more money and scale faster by doing the wrong thing, which is the wrong message we need to be sending. So what we're trying to do is kind of balance between those two. On the creator side, I've been shocked by how slow they've been.
Really?
Yeah. I've been telling all of my friends, artists and creators, go to the Sureel website and log in. We'll get you approved through the system. We have to check because a bunch of AI companies are trying to hack us and all that kind of stuff. We'll get you approved. The first 100 songs are free, and then you've done it. If you want to pay more, it's like a cent per asset. Something. I mean, it's minuscule. If you've got a big catalog, it's fractions of a cent. But for some reason, they're waiting for someone else to act. They're waiting for this other thing to happen. And I'm like, and Tamai, the CEO, says the most the fatal thing to do is to wait, because in their goal, long-term goal, is to create synthetic data and not need the original creators. We have to claim our stake now, or else we won't. So I've been disappointed at how slow it's been. I will say that the larger rights holders, labels, and publishers are moving fast for them, but so much of it has been having to have a version of this conversation, but explain to them, like, the way that you make money could drop by 25% by 2028. And that's by internal metrics in the music industry. So let's say they're wrong. Do you want to drop 15? You want to have that earnings call? No. And then the other thing is do you want to say to your artists, like for managers, and our first management company signed up, and we're going to announce that shortly. But as a manager, do you want to look when your artist says, hey, what are you doing about AI? You're like, oh, we didn't want to spend a fraction of a cent to protect your song for a month. We will pay for Dropbox to store them, but we're not going to, it's like, come on. And ultimately, I think what it comes down to is if you're an artist or you work with them, if you're an artist, you need to just say to your manager, your label, your publisher, I want my work protected now. I don't want a freaking letter sent to an AI company that's just going to ignore it. I don't want to, sign up to some list that says, "Oh, don't train on me." Well, how would they know? You know,
Yeah.
they need to take control. And the way I would look at it is this: no, you finish the song, you drop it into Sureel, then you register it. Then you do all the stuff that you would normally do, all those protections that you would take. I mean, look at it this way: when you register a song with ASCAP, they don't know what it sounds like. They have no clue.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a name. Like how are you supposed to like, and this is the thing, songs are now code, whether we like it or not, because because they are code to the AI companies, and the AI companies will be the biggest means of getting music to people. Every single social app, my Notion app, right, that I take notes in has an AI button in it. The tools of creation exist across everything. This Zoom has an AI companion in it. I can ask questions of our chat, right? I can have it generate something that's probably taken from other people's chats, right?
Yeah.
So attribution is the most powerful word we need to know because it's our way of dropping the anchor, saying this is who we are, and um, and attribution allows the AI companies to scale. So the short answer to your question is everyone needs to do this yesterday. The longer they wait, the more likely they get synthetic data has its win, and the less money there is to be made, and the harder it is to fight them if those that want to do the wrong thing.
It's incredible. How do people find it if they're
Yeah,
interested?
Sureel, Sureel.AI. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm not on social media, but I'm on LinkedIn. And I'll glad you get you the right way. And just to say it again, I've been working in technology a long time, since 2009, and I'm really careful with who I work with. And these are good people doing it for the right reasons. And the reason I know that is because they could make a lot of money doing the wrong thing
Yeah.
because anyone would hire them. And they've chosen, I think because of family bonds, they've chosen the right way. And it's hard. And I keep saying, but in the end, this is the right thing. And that matters. It really matters.
It's a beautiful thing, and it keeps people creating. That's the goal. I love
Amen.
it. At this time, you want to go through the Jawntlet. These are my questions that I ask all my guests that come through here. Starts with the one hit wonders. You're just picking a favorite. First one, Billy Joel or Elton John?
Billy Joel,
Yeah. Okay.
particularly because I fell in love with Innocent Man, that album when it first came out. And we had
Yeah.
it as a cassette in the car. I do love Elton, but I gotta say Billy Joel. Yeah.
Good answer.
Mm.
Debbie Harry or Joan Jett?
Joan Jett.
Good
Yeah.
answer. Good answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's from PA, so
Yeah.
I gotta show my love.
I didn't know that, but that's it. But I'll claim it.
Yeah, Upper Darby, the same as Tina Fey.
Yeah.
They got good things in the water there. Aretha Franklin or Tina Turner?
Aretha. Yeah.
Nirvana or Pearl Jam?
I've got Kurt Cobain behind me here, but I gotta say, seeing Pearl Jam at Brixton Academy on the opening night of the UK tour, second album. Yeah, so I'm Pearl Jam.
Wow, that sounds
Yeah, it
phenomenal. That
was
sounds
amazing.
absolutely phenomenal. Janis Joplin or Stevie Nicks?
Stevie Nicks.
Uh,
Most of the songwriting.
yeah. Oh, for
Songwriting's so
sure.
cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Did you hear any of the Cunningham Bird album that was
Mm-mm.
they redid Buckingham Nicks in its
Ooh,
entirety? It's Madison Cunningham and Andrew Bird. It's phenomenal. You should check
look
that
at.
out.
I will do. Yeah, definitely.
The big cliche: Beatles or the Stones?
Stones.
I thought so.
Yeah, yeah. Exile. I mean, I love Beatles, but Stones is definitely Exile for me is the one.
And the last of the one hit wonders: Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven?
Stairway to Heaven.
Good answer. Every once in a while, I like to throw a little, slip one in, guest specific, tailored to them or their career. And so I will ask you, do you still take Mondays over Fridays?
Amen. Yes, I do. Yeah. The reason, actually, the reason is it's one of my old songs, but Monday is the bartender's Friday night. So,
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Next section is the top 10 countdown. In this, we use Jawn to be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
music, it can be anything you want. First one, what was your first Jawn? What was the first thing you were obsessed with as a kid?
music.
Yeah.
Always music. Yeah.
Can you remember the first song that you claimed as your own?
The first, so the first, I'll say it this way, the first 7-inch single that I ever bought, I was going to lie, but I'm going to tell you the truth. The first one I bought was Pipes of Peace by Paul McCartney, which I kind of regret. But because the second one I bought was Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Relax.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I want to preface that with I could get most of the music for free, but those are the two that I chose to buy. And I went out and bought it because it was thrown across the room. It's such a great tune too. Yeah.
It's awesome. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Number two, what's your current Jawn? What are you into right now?
Um, I'm really into I want to get better at my Substack. I want to share more on it. It's been really good. And the last piece I wrote was called uh, I'm really interested in this idea of social media and democracy and how we can't have both. And so I'm exploring that, and I'm working on a book called Daily Active User, social media through social technology through the lens of addiction. So that's my writing. I'm trying to get better at it. I write slowly and painfully, but it gets there in the end.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, Substack has been one of the most exciting things, like in the past year or so, for me to be able to share. Like I DJ, so like I'll share
Yeah.
playlists on there. You know, I'll share episodes, kind of talk about different things that are going on musically. You know, I got a website, but no one goes there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like no one
Yeah, I
goes to
hear you.
websites anymore.
Yeah. And I really hope they don't drop the ball. I don't think they will. Apparently Elon Musk tried to buy them and they said no. So I think
Yes.
I think so respect to you guys.
Number three, what was your first concert? What was the first live show? Had to have been young, right? With the fam.
So I was a baby. I don't remember many of them, but the first one I remember really wanting to go to and going was Adam and the Ants Prince Charming tour.
Very
And
cool.
the same year, Madness as well. I went to see Madness. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's an awesome back to back. My I always like to say my first concert was David Bowie and my second concert was David Bowie. But I
Nice.
found out recently that my parents took me to the Philadelphia Zoo because the Talking Heads performed there back in '79. I was 2 years old. I
Classy. I
remember none
like
of
it.
it, but yeah, hell yeah. Number four, what was your last concert?
Last concert was I can't think of one. It might have been it would have been a singer-songwriter friend of mine. I think it might have been no, I can't think of it. I'll say this one, the last one I played. How about that?
Yeah, that counts. I'll take it. Yeah. That was actually, I was going to ask, you still play? You still are you still out there
You
doing it,
know,
or
I just turned 51 on my on Friday of last week,
happy
and
birthday?
thank you very much. And I sat down and said, could I write a song again? Because I haven't written a song since 2007, and I was between two meetings and I wrote one, and it's pretty darn good. So my fingers are really sore. I'm getting back into it. No, I would play for my family before bed every night, during the pandemic, on and on. But no, I haven't really done it. Last show I played was probably at the bitter end. A friend of mine finally convinced me to come out. I started playing. The monitor blew. People were talking, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for this again." But the show before that was with my band, and that was when my wife was pregnant with our kid, and so that was beautiful. So
That's awesome. I
yeah, but
started playing.
I'm getting the temptation again. I'm
Yeah.
feeling the urge. Yeah,
I started playing out again, and I got to tell you, like, I definitely missed it. Like, and not just the performing part. I love like loading up the car, driving out to the
yeah.
gig, like, sitting down afterwards, maybe grabbing a bite at a diner or something. I like the whole thing. But I'm older now, so like, yeah,
I
I
feel
can't
you.
I
Yeah,
can't do it like I used to.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Number five, what was your favorite concert?
I think I was thinking about this beforehand. It was Michelle and Degiacello at the bitter end. No, no, the bitter end, at the Village Underground. And the reason is we were really close, and she's got this phenomenal band, and she had Jean Lake behind her, and she's doing her thing, and Jean was getting a little overexcited in the wrong moment, and she just turned back and like gave him like a little nod, like, and he go, yeah, yes, ma'am. I got you. Yes, ma'am.
It's amazing.
I was like literally like 6, 7 feet away, and she's also the only artist that I ever got nervous to meet. I've never been nervous to meet anybody in my entire life except her, and you heard how much I can talk, speechless. And
Wow.
my best friend was making fun of me in front of her, like, I've never seen this guy speechless. She's like, it's cool, calm down. I'm like, yes, but words, not me. No, I couldn't do
It's
it. I couldn't do
amazing.
it. She's so amazing.
I literally have only glassed over once, and it was Jewel in
Oh
like
wow.
96,
Mm,
95, 96, somewhere around there. And it was less about her star power.
yeah.
She was like such an interesting person. Like I just felt intimidated to be around her.
Yeah.
But yeah, less about the fame and
Yeah.
mostly just about how much I revered her as an artist. It was
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Number 6, who have you never seen live that you wish you could have? They can be living or dead.
Donny Hathaway.
Oh, yeah, man.
So when I was a baby, my folks had a stereo with the speakers that went up, like you put stuff on top of, and they used to put me to sleep in my crib on top of the speaker, and played Donny Hathaway live and Little Feat, Dixie Chicken. Those are the two albums. And so when I grew up and I was about 6 or 7, I knew every word to them. Like they'd stuck with me. But so but I've listened to those recordings so many times, and like what I wouldn't have given to see him do Jealous Guy or do like What's Going On live, with like Willie Weeks on bass. It's just yeah,
That's killer.
as good as it gets for me. Yeah.
That's killer. I randomly, in going through these questions, just realized what we bonded over when we met at that Fergie's night, and it was you covered Graham Parsons' "She."
Oh
And
yeah, yeah. What a tune.
and I geeked out about it, and you were like, "Oh, okay, we're now friends," because
Absolutely.
and
So on Apple Music, there's a live version of me of She that you
oh
can.
hell yeah, I gotta check
I
that
actually
out.
opened a show with it. I opened a show with it at Rockwood Music Hall, and then I know on that same night I covered Who's Gonna Drive You Home as well, Cars.
Yes,
Yeah,
oh that's killer.
yeah,
I got to check that
yeah,
out after this.
yeah.
Number 7, name an unappreciated John, something you wish people had paid more attention to.
Books. No, in John books. I think it's I wish people were no, I see what it is. The attention economy. I think it's something that everyone needs to understand how they are interacting with it and what it is doing to them, and how we are losing we're losing a lot from it. It gives us some, but it's taking so much. And I wish people would look honestly at how they interact with it. And that might look like I'm not going to read the online version. I'm going to buy a newspaper. I'm going to listen to a vinyl instead of an MP3, like whatever that looks like, but pulling out of it, that's what I go for.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I have this Substack piece that I've been it's been sitting in my drafts for months now about the fact that I believe that the reason we're in a cultural kind of arrested development, why like since 2015 everything has been, reboots and IP and musically has kind of been somewhere in the same kind of thing, is the fact that we no longer pay enough attention to the things we are trying to engage with. And
Yep.
we're just kind of passively listening to music and
Yep.
passively watching movies, and we just
Yep.
want some sort of familiarity so that we can check the boxes and go, I know what's going on here. But the
Absolutely.
things that excite us every single time are the things we have no idea, right?
Yep.
So like it's
Yep.
wild that we're drawn to the things that we actually don't enjoy.
Absolutely. All we have is what we pay attention to, right? I mean, that's literally that is our life. Our life is the things do you want to lay on your deathbed and said, man, I'm glad I spent 6 hours scrolling Instagram, and like, no one's going to wish that,
Right.
right? Oh geez, I wish there were more memes, and no one woke up this morning wishing they had more content either. Like, and I think, my version of that, just so you know, is I shut my phone off at 7 o'clock at night. I don't turn it on again until 9:30 in the morning. I have a light phone, like a little dumb phone that I carry around for that period in case I'm needed by my family. And that's been a game changer. And then again, physical books and actual newspapers, like it changes you. And again, we are tool using creatures, or we're used by our tools. And that's where we need to be very careful in that algorithmic world.
Yeah, I love it. I actually like that idea. I might have to look
Do
into
it.
that.
Do it.
I'm married to my phone though, so I'm probably probably gonna fail, but I'll try. I'll try it.
Light phone, Light, the light phone. That's the one to get. With the light
Okay,
phone through the new ones coming out. Yeah, ready to go.
I gotta look at it.
Yeah.
Number 8. What's your favorite album?
The Sundays Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic. I can listen to that album endlessly. First song, Skin and Bones. Oh my God. Like, it's not even close for me. I love, love that album.
Do you feel like there's a Sundays resurgence coming around? Because I kind of feel it in the air. I feel like I hear them like ambiently.
If there is anything good left in the world, then there will be. Yes. Yes.
I love it. That's awesome. Number 9, name an artist whose output you'll consume anything they release.
Michonne Dagicello.
Yeah.
Sometimes she doesn't land for me, but I will still always sit down and like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. Yeah. I think, yeah. And when it hits for me, when we like, nothing better.
It's great. I love it. Number 10, what is your favorite Jawn of all time? Again, can be anything you want it to be.
My kid.
Yeah.
The greatest. Yeah.
You said 13?
Yeah, 13. And being a dad and navigating that world, helping her to navigate the world and be who they want to be. And, that's the number one.
I dig it.
Yeah.
So everyone, like we said, Sureel.AI is where you want to go look if you were interested. We'll have links, of course, obviously in the show notes to this and all. If anybody wants to find your Substack, how do they find that?
It's called Daily Active User. So you can look on there. And I'm friendly, so you can always write and tell me you disagree with me. That's all good. Yeah,
I love it. Benji, thank you so much for doing this. Like I said, I've been really looking forward to this conversation for quite some time because you're beyond an interesting guy. You also made some really great music back in the day. So someday we'll have to do this over a cup of coffee.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Thank you, my friend. I'm really glad I'm glad we could do this.
My thanks again to Benji for joining me on the show today. You can find Benji's Substack Daily Active User by visiting lovingyourwork.substack.com. For more on AI and attribution, visit Sureel.AI. That is Sureel.AI. Links to all of those are, of course, as always, in the show notes. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And it is never too late to get yourself a super awesome Jawn Scout Merit Badge for Citizenship of the World just by rating and reviewing us. Don't forget to visit www.yothat'smyjawn.com for the link tree with links to articles, merchandise, all of the previous episodes of this podcast, guest appearances on other podcasts, and more. And while you are there, please be sure to sign up for our mailing list to get all the updates delivered straight into your inbox. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/YoThat'sMyJawn for updates and live streams. Follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Substack at Yo That's My Jawn, and search Yo That's My Jawn on YouTube to find the Yo That's My Jawn YouTube channel. Like and subscribe the heck out of that ish. We want to hear from you. Reach out, and touch some Jawn. If you're listening to this on Monday, I'm on the radio tonight from 5 to 8 p.m. on whynotradio.net. Join me. We'll dance it out. Blue skies. Until next time, everybody. That's my Jawn. Displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You taste it, things that don't need to be measured. Yo, That's My Jawn is a Lonely Monk production. Written and produced by yours truly, Nate Runkle. Theme song by me, under the moniker Nate 3.0. Special thanks to Fox Run Brands, DX Ferris, Andrew Scott, Maggie Poulos, Dan Drago, Natalie Runkle, and the beautifully vibrant and wickedly stunning Katie Daubney. If you or anyone you know has any ideas they would like to share or any guests they would like to hear on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at yothat'smyjawn@gmail.com or hit us up on the socials at Yo That's My Jawn. Until next time, be sure to displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. Tilt your head back and shout to the world, Yo, that's my Jawn.